Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm coming through loud and clear. Welcome to tonight's webinar. My name's Tony Gates, and I'm joined here by Meredith Rayner, who we'll be talking to in a moment. But first of all, thank you for joining us, and have a look around your screen of your computer or your device on which you're joining us tonight, and familiarize yourself with the interface. If you haven't been to a webinar before, basically it's like a talk over the web. And the important feature is that it's live. So the advantage of that is that we can talk to you and with you, so we can kind of get a sense of what you're thinking about what we're saying. The best way you can do that is via the chat box. Now, if you're on a computer like a laptop or a MacBook or a desktop computer of some sort, that will be over there somewhere. The chat box will be on sort of the left side of, oh no, wait, wrong way around, that side of your screen. If you're on a mobile device, it might look a bit different. You may have to play around to find that, and it may not have the same functionality. So if you can transition to like a laptop or a desktop, it will probably give you the best result. But either way, you should be able to at least hear us and hopefully see some of the slides. So feel free to chat in the chat box, say hi to each other, say hi to us, and feel free to ask questions throughout. Once Meredith starts talking, you're welcome to ask questions anytime, and we'll stop and see how you're going and what we can address from those questions for you. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about anxiety in your family. It is the first session out of 4, so I hope you realized that when you signed up for this and know what you're getting yourself into. There are 4 sessions, and you really need to attend all of them, or as many as you can, to get sort of as much as you can out of this course. Because they are designed to build on each other. If you do miss one, don't worry too much. There are recordings that you can catch up on later, which you'll get via your email. But we really do recommend attending live if you can, because we think you'll get the best sort of result that way. A few things I need to mention before we get stuck into what you're all here for, which is to hear Meredith talk about anxiety in your family. And I need to do some acknowledgements. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we're meeting tonight. Although we're spread out over Australia and possibly around the world as well, we're aware that our land has traditional owners. For us here in Melbourne, that's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. So we'd like to pay respects to elders past and present and emerging, and also acknowledge any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people we may have joining us tonight. We'd also like to acknowledge the Victorian government for supporting these webinars, not just tonight's, but all the webinars that we bring to you through Raising Children Network. That's why you're able to access these for free due to their generous funding and support. Now, we're going to be talking about anxiety tonight, which can be a bit of an anxiety-provoking topic, as any kind of talking about parenting or family matters can be. So just be wary of that and pay attention to what's happening for you as you're participating in the session. If you do find that you're becoming concerned or upset, we recommend that you reach out for some further support. Some options are available to you. You can check out raisingchildren.net.au that has a whole page on support that's available to you. Some options are you might want to check out Parenting Line in your state. Now, the number will be different depending on which state you're in, so just go look that up on the website listed there. Or you could try Lifeline if you're feeling like you need immediate support. And just to note that the best we can do for you in a session like this is some general sort of guidance. Don't take that as being kind of the prescription for you and your particular circumstances. If you do feel like you've got something trickier that you're dealing with, or some particular issues that are making things hard for you, you will need to see a professional in your own area. You could start with your GP. Now, this webinar is for all sorts of people who are concerned about anxiety in the age, particularly parents who have, or carers who have children that they're looking after in the age range 0 all the way up to 16, really, and beyond, because of course we know that adults often have to contend with anxiety as well, and Meredith will be covering sort of quite a holistic way of managing anxiety and understanding anxiety. So just to tell you a little bit more about Meredith, before I hand over to her in just a moment. So Meredith is a psychologist, and she's got many years of experience working with parents, young children and adolescents in public mental health, private clinical practice and in schools. And at the moment, most recently, she's currently the Director of Care in a large school setting, building strengths and addressing mental health difficulties for children from prep to year 12. Feel free if you want to discuss anything more with Meredith about things she does, let us know in the chat and we'll see if we can deal with that. Now, just to get you guys sort of participating and interacting and taking full advantage of the live platform that we're using, I'm going to run a poll in a second, okay? Which means that if it works properly and shows up on your screen, you'll be able to click an answer to the question. All right, so you don't need to answer this in the chat box, although you can if that's more comfortable for you. But I'll start that poll now, and if all goes to plan, I'll get you to tell us by clicking on one or more of these options, how old are your children? Now that could be the children that have motivated you to attend this session. If you're a parent or maybe a professional or a teacher or whoever, just think of the children who are sort of most relevant when you think about anxiety or managing anxiety. And just you can click more than one of these options as well. So if you've got more than one child, you can select more than one option. So thank you. I can see that many of you are responding. And in fact, nearly everyone has already responded to this while I'm just blabbering on here. So it seems like most of us, about 60%, have a child in the age range 0 to 5. And with a nice spread beyond that, kind of tapering off as we get towards the older age groups. And we do have a nice proportion of people attending in some sort of other capacity beyond being a parent or carer. So great mix of people tonight and a pleasure to have you all with us. So thank you for participating in that. I'll just end that poll there. Now, just a little bit of an overview of what you can look forward to across the 4 sessions. We'll go through week by week. Each week it's a new topic. So in the first week it'll be an introduction to understanding anxiety. In the second week we'll be talking about anxiety and beginning to manage it. So that's kind of like the skill of talking about anxiety, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And then week 3, further strategies for managing anxiety. And finally, why anxiety can be hard and what to do next. So that's what you can look forward to across the 4 weeks. And I hope you're as excited as I am as I hand over to Meredith to begin talking us through it. Meredith.
Thanks, Tony, and hello, everybody. It's really terrific to have the opportunity to be able to interact with so many of you. And the plan, as Tony said, is to run this webinar over 4 weeks. But we really want to make sure that we teach you something each week. So we don't plan on spending the first couple of weeks just talking about theory. We're going to get straight stuck into some things that you can try to help you manage anxiety in your children a little bit better. And as Tony mentioned, although we're talking predominantly about anxiety in children, the same strategies can be really helpful for you, for some of us who experience anxiety yourself, even just the experience of having a child who's struggling to manage worry and anxiety is anxiety provoking. I'm sure those of you who've got children in that situation will understand what I'm talking about when I say it makes you very worried yourself when your child's got anxiety. So lots of these skills will apply to you as well. And I know we have quite a few people attending, as Tony mentioned, who are either health professionals or working in childcare or in teaching. So these strategies are terrific things that you can learn that can help the children in the setting that you've got as well. School, unfortunately, is something that generates a bit of anxiety in kids who find that emotion a little bit harder to manage. So we're really hopeful that at the end of each week, you'll get something to take away and try and bring back to us next week and let us know how it went. And as Tony mentioned, we plan to build each week on what we've learnt previously. So I'm really keen to encourage you to attend each one if you can. If not, you'll get links to recordings. So if for some reason you're not able to attend, It would be really good if you could just try to listen to the recording before you come along to the next one, just so you're able to catch up. And fire your questions through, I think, and Tony's going to help manage the questions for us so that I don't get bogged down trying to flick between screens and talking to you about content as well.
And just to let everyone know, we won't be on your screen on video the whole time. So now I'm going to take us off the screen. Don't worry, we're still here. Nothing's crashed at your end or anything like that.
You know what we look like now. So.
Oh, yeah, just so you know we're real people and we're here talking to you live.
Yep.
But we just take ourselves off screen so that you can kind of concentrate and read the slides a bit better, and it might help with some people's bandwidth as well. So don't panic. We're about to go off your screens, and you'll be able to see what Meredith is talking about.
You can still hear us, and I'll flick through the slides. So, so week one, obviously, as Tony mentioned, we're just going to start by understanding a little bit more about anxiety and some thinking about some things that you can do to start to understand it a little bit better. So I guess that I just wanted to start by just raising something that you may already be aware of, but if not, it's pretty interesting information, I think, to know that anxiety is the most common mental health problem in Australia. So there's more people experience anxiety in Australia than any of the other mental health difficulties. In fact, 1 in 4 people report experiencing anxiety. That's quite a lot. You know, for anybody who's got a family with 2 kids, and the odds will tell us that at least one of you will be experiencing anxiety at any time. When that adds up to over 2 million Australians experiencing anxiety each year, so that's a lot of people. Fortunately, we know quite a bit about anxiety now, and we know that there's lots of things that we can do that can help, and it's particularly helpful to learn some of this stuff when to help your children to learn some of these things. I often find at the end of going through some of this information with adults, they really commonly say, I wish I'd have known that when I was younger. I wish I'd known some of this when I was younger, and it would have made quite a difference. So although it's really worrying when you've got a child who's experiencing anxiety, I hope that you feel a little bit confident to know that you're not alone. Lots of people are in the same boat, and there's lots that we can do about it now. So we'll go through some of those things. I just wanted to also mention panic attacks. So panic attacks, for those of you who are aware, a panic attack is a really intense feeling of anxiety when your heart beats really, really fast and you're feeling of anxiety. When your heart beats really, really fast and you sometimes you're not able to concentrate on anything. In fact, some people who experience panic attack talk about the feeling a little bit like they're having a heart attack. It's really intense. And can be really scary. So if you've experienced that, or one of your children has experienced that, that's very intense and really difficult to go through and to manage. And of course, really scary once you've had one, to worry about it happening again. But 40% of us at some point in their lives experience a panic attack. So although it's really scary, again, you're not alone. It's a reasonably common thing to experience, and there's lots that we can do now to help manage that.
Now, Meredith, just an interesting question that's come through about those statistics, and I'm wondering if you can offer us any more details. So Rayner was wondering if you can say any more about that 1 in 4. Is that kind of like a clinical diagnosis of anxiety, or is that just some general experience of anxiety?
That's a really good question. It's 1 in 4 who have anxiety at a point that it interrupts or has an impact on the way that they manage their lives. So not all of them will have been to a GP or to a psychologist and received a diagnosis of anxiety, but they will report that they experience anxiety to a point that it interferes or stops them from doing something that they need to be doing. So it's a significant level of anxiety, not just a bit worried about something. That's a really good question, though. Great to have questions firing in. So I guess one thing that we really want to start thinking about in terms of how do we managing anxiety in our children and in ourselves is actually thinking about what anxiety is. It's really common, it's particularly currently, for us to jump straight to using the word anxiety and talking about anxiety in those terms. But I really just wanted to introduce you to the idea of anxiety can be a bit of a continuum. So you can start with worry at one end, and you can build up to like a kind of an intense panic attack, or really severe an anxiety attack, as I talked about a little bit earlier. So one of the things that we're going to talk a little bit about tonight and over the next couple of weeks is how you talk to your children and to yourselves about anxiety and what you say to yourself. And I'd encourage you to start thinking a little bit about using the word worry when worry is appropriate, and using the word anxious when that's appropriate, and being careful about using the term anxiety because it's so common now, and it's very commonly diagnosed. I've noticed, we've all noticed, that a lot of young people are talking about the fact that they've got anxiety as something that is kind of permanent and not able to be managed, or something they've got to battle for their whole lives. So we want to start thinking over the next couple of weeks about maybe using the term sometimes worry if that's appropriate, and we'll talk about that a little bit more tonight, about when is it appropriate to talk about somebody being worried about something, and when do we need to use the term anxious. And so it's, I think about it a little bit like this. So you can start off feeling a little bit uncomfortable about something, or a little bit worried about something, and that's a really normal experience. All of us will feel really anxious or really worried or uncomfortable about something that's new or different, or when we're not sure what the outcome's going to be. Just because we're feeling that doesn't mean it's going to turn into something debilitating. And this is what we're going to work on as adults and parents over the next couple of weeks, is like, how do we, I guess, intervene early enough when somebody's feeling a bit of discomfort or worried or uncertain or uneasy about a situation, and do some things early on before it gets debilitating. Those of you who've experienced a panic attack or been around someone who's had a panic attack will know that there's not much you can do when a panic attack's happening except to sit with someone and just stay calm around them and help them to calm down. Whereas if we're able to identify things early on, there's lots more we can do if we're thinking of the lower end of the continuum. And one way you can think a little bit about anxiety is about worrying about worrying. So sometimes you might have noticed that particularly kids or adults who do worry about things quite a bit, you can get it's an uncomfortable feeling, and you don't like it, and you want to avoid it. So you tend to start worrying about the fact that you might be worried about something, or if you feel worried, then you're worried about that, and worried it's going to get bigger and get harder to manage and more difficult. And what that does is build it up. So you might start with being a little bit worried about something, and then you worry about that feeling's never going to go away, or it might stop you from doing something, or you might end up having a panic attack, and so it becomes bigger and harder to manage. So that's another reason why what we want to try and do is think about how we can start to identify and manage worry or anxiety when it's at the lower end of the continuum, rather than wait until it gets debilitating or difficult to manage. Of course, that sounds simple, but it's quite difficult to do. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more tonight and over the next few weeks. But I just wanted to add to that, I guess, for those of you who are parents, or even those of you who are teachers or childcare health professional workers who are working with children, managing worry or anxiety, I think, as an adult is one of the hardest things to help young children with, or to help children with. Most of us can deal with anger, like it's not fantastic when our kids are really angry about something, but it's something that we can understand and we can work with. The same with sad. It's sad when your children are sad, but it's something that's manageable. I tend to find that worry, I know when my kids are worried, or parents that I work with when their kids are worried, the first thing you want to do when somebody is worried about something is what? You want to stop it. You want to fix it for them. You want to make worry go away. It's a really instinctive thing for us when we're told about something that's worrying a child in particular, is to want to jump in straight away and do something about it. So I'm just going to really acknowledge early on that what we're asking you to do is pretty challenging. It's difficult to learn new ways to deal with worry. That's why we're spending a couple of weeks on it and not just giving you a a quick little tip sheet and say, go away and try these few things. It's something we can do, but we acknowledge that it's difficult. So we're going to spend a bit of time together over the next couple of weeks. And the first thing we're going to talk about is how to start spotting anxiety or worry. So if we're going to try and build in some skills in ourselves and our children to pick up the what's going on and address it at the discomfort level, then the first thing we've got to do, obviously, is think a little bit about how we spot it. So we're going to spend a bit of time on that tonight. Okay, so what's our aim? So I guess our aim over the next couple of weeks for ourselves and also for our children is to be able to identify when children are worried or anxious about something at an earlier stage in the cycle, and to address it in a way that's going to be helpful. And that's really difficult as parents or as carers, is because sometimes you get really stuck not knowing what to say. Do I jump in and try to fix it? Do I tell them not to worry? Do I try and convince them that it's all going to be okay? Or do I just, ignore it and play it down? It's really difficult to know how to respond. So our aim is to give you guys some skills to be able to do that, but in the doing and the managing better, what you'll be doing is teaching your children some skills as well. So the idea is by the time they get a little bit older, they're able to internally do some of the things that we're going to get you to help them to do. And then as they get older, they'll be able to do that themselves without needing instant guidance for any time that worry comes up. Sounds simple, but I know it's a challenge, so we're going to spend some time on that over the next bit of time. Doing okay, Tony? We haven't got any burning questions we need to jump in and
not at the moment.
Great.
But
okay.
As always, we encourage you to share your questions or even comments, folks. Meredith has covered a bit there about this continuum of anxiety, worrying about worry, the fact that worry seems to be one of those things that is quite tricky for people to handle. Does that resonate with you, or is there anything that you're not sure about in terms of that? Or is there anything you want to share? Let us know in the chat box, and we'll get to that, dealing with any questions either now or later on.
Great.
But of course, just be aware as well. Don't feel like you have to share anything if you're not comfortable or if you think it's too personal, because just whatever you're comfortable with sharing.
Sounds good. Okay, so I wanted to just stop for a little bit now and give you a little bit of a story which can put humans' capacity to worry or be anxious about things in a bit of context. So I find this piece of research or this information that we know now can really help us understand what's going on. And it's kind of casting your mind back to a time way back in early caveman days. So our ancestors a long time ago, and think about two different types of cavemen, for example. So the first caveman that I want to have a bit of a think about is somebody who feels really confident and isn't really scared of things, pretty cruisy, goes through life feeling pretty chillaxed and pretty happy about things. And when he wants something to eat, what he does is he just decides that he's hungry and strolls merrily out of his cave with not a care in the world, trips across the savannah and just goes to see what he can find to eat. And then the second type of caveman to think about is one who is much more cautious. And so he knows that there's danger out there, and so he will peep out and have a bit of a look around and think about what time of day it is and be wary of things moving in the grass and any sounds he can hear. And he might even, sneak out a bit and dash back into the cave where it's safe, and then sneak out a bit further and dash back into the cave where it's safe. So the second caveman has a much more uncomfortable life, doesn't he? Like thinking about things a lot and worrying about things and being really cautious and adjusting his life. But which caveman do you think is the one who would survive the dangers of the savannah? And which one do you think it is that we're descended from? And when I ask this question, lots of young people and adults will say to me, I really wish it was the first caveman, the kind of chillaxed dude who didn't worry about much and just skipped through life without a care in the world, because I really wish I was descended from him. But the reality is that that caveman probably got swallowed by something big and nasty, and it's actually the really cautious caveman that we're descended from. So over the years, the people who have been really wary and careful of things and watching out for things and looking for danger and being hyper alert to things and making strategies, they're the ones who survived over the generations. So we're kind of the descendants of the descendants of the descendants of that really wary caveman back in early times, which is fantastic in terms of surviving saber-toothed tigers and whatever other animals there were out there. But of course, it can become a real problem now, and particularly, I guess, these days when we're so connected to the world and we know everything that's going on really quickly. Every danger that's happening, we hear about really quickly over the media, and especially with our young people connected to social media. So, while on the one hand it's great to know that there's a reason why we are hardwired to be anxious, and that it's a safety mechanism and it's the thing that's kept us alive and has kept us alive for a long time. It's also a bit of a challenge now, and that's why we're talking about addressing it over the next little bit of time. It looks like there's quite a few questions about somatic symptoms coming through there. Is that
That's
right,
correct,
Tony?
Meredith. Do you want to stop to address that now?
We should.
It was all started with a question from Gillian in particular, was asking about physical symptoms that might go along with anxiety.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. So thank you for that. You've preempted, I guess, a slide in a couple of minutes we're going to come to. But definitely, particularly in children and young people, somatic symptoms with anxiety is really common. In fact, with lots of them, they will experience the somatic symptoms and they'll actually tell you they're not worried about anything. So they'll feel, and I've noticed some of them have come up here, headaches and stomach aches are particularly common, feeling sick, feeling upset in the stomach or having headaches is a really, really common thing that children experience. And sometimes they'll tell you they're not worried, but that in young kids in particular, that's not always a great indication, because sometimes they don't know enough about worry to really understand what we mean when we say we're worried. So we have to take a step back, really, I guess, and think if there's no physical or medical condition that's explaining it, then is it worry? Is there something that's worrying them, and what can we do about that? And teaching them how to understand what they're feeling and what to do to help alleviate that a little bit. And that's something we'll talk about. Somatic symptoms are really key in young children. Exactly. Okay. So all of those somatic symptoms, I guess, if you feel like they may be being caused by the fact that your child's having trouble managing their anxiety, then I think what we're talking about over the next couple of days or the next few weeks will be a terrific way to start. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about what can help, which I guess is, and most of these things we're going to talk about, all of these things I guess we'll talk about over the next few weeks, but we're going to start with some of the early, some of the first ones, because these ones are, I guess, first line treatment, and are part of the reason why I guess you guys are here is to learn what you can do. So I think one of the really important things to know is that that the adults around the children can play a big part in helping them manage their anxiety better. Now, notice I'm not talking about them controlling their anxiety, and there's a reason for that, which we'll unpack a little bit over the next couple of weeks. But we really want to try and get away from the idea that you can control any of your emotions, really. That when you're feeling something that you're not happy with, here's a step you can do, and that'll get it all under control, and that will make it all go away. We really want to talk about managing it more. Emotions are not easy. They're not really something we can control in the way we control our behaviour, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But I guess reassuring for us that there's so many of you out there who are interested in learning what you can do and what you can say and how you can teach the children that are around you a little bit more about managing anxiety, and because that's really an important step. And for children as well, listening to what the adults say, but also seeing how the adults respond. And it's one of the things I want to challenge you guys to do over the next week is really to think about, what kind of things do you do when you're anxious or when you're feeling worried about something, and what might the children around you be seeing? So as we unpack and talk a little bit about some of the things that can be a bit helpful, I really challenge you to think about that in yourself as well. Because often what we do as adults is we put on a brave front and we make it look like we're not anxious or we're never worried about anything. Nothing worries us. And sometimes the danger in that is that the children can get the message that anxiety is something that's not okay to have, because mum doesn't have it, or my teacher doesn't have it, or my dad doesn't have it, or, you know, they never get worried about anything. And so why am I worried? There's something wrong with me because I'm worried. And of course we know that's not true. Everybody gets worried about things. Everybody gets nervous about things. It's one of the things that makes us perform much better is when we're feeling a little bit heightened or nervous about something. It really got lots of physiological responses that really get our blood moving and get ourself managing or responding at peak performance. So it's a bit of a challenge. We're going to work through it together, but think a little bit about how you respond to anxiety and worry. Are you teaching the children in your class or the children around you, your children at home, that you never are ever worried about anything, and what kind of message is that? By the same, you know, on the other hand, you don't want to share every worry that you've got with the children, so somewhere in between that is a really helpful thing to do. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next couple of minutes. So what we say as well as what we do is important, I guess, is what I'm saying by that. And it's just an interesting thing for you to know is it's much the same for all strong emotions. So although we're talking tonight and over the next few weeks about worry or anxiety, keep in the back of your mind that the same things that you're learning to do and the same messages you're giving work really well with anger, frustration, sadness, embarrassment, jealousy, any of this really strong emotions. So if you're here for one child or someone in your classroom or someone you know who's had a bit of difficulty with worry, but in the back of your mind you've got somebody else who maybe finds anger or frustration or sadness or something else difficult, the good news is what you learn here we can apply to all those situations. So we're really learning skills about how to manage strong emotions. We're also going to talk a little bit about some really practical things that you've probably heard a little bit about already, but they're very effective, so we're going to talk about them a bit more. Mindfulness and relaxation strategies in particular are really helpful, and we'll spend some time on those skills. Medication is something that we talk about in the next couple of weeks, and the reason for that is because there's lots of other things we can do before we need to get to medication. It's not to say that medication is not helpful. It can be, but there's other things that we can do before we get to that point. And particularly with kids, we tend not to try and jump to medication too quickly if we've got some other things we can try first. So we will get to that, but we'll do all the other dot points first. Okay, so skills, I guess the first couple of steps in skills for tonight. The first thing we want to talk about, we want to think about tonight and challenge you to think about over the next couple of weeks is this idea about understanding feelings versus understanding behaviours. And here's a really important thing. If you only take one or two messages home from tonight, here is one, is the idea that all feelings are okay. So just as I guess as I alluded to a little bit earlier, it's very difficult. In fact, I'd probably suggest it's impossible, but I'll go with very difficult to actually learn how to control feelings, to control emotions. It's a really nice thought to think that we can stop them or we shouldn't be feeling something, therefore, you know, by logically talking ourselves out of it, we'll know that we can stop it. But what we really know is that emotions are not something we can control. They don't have to overwhelm us, but they're going to happen. So you're never going to go through the rest of your life without feeling worried or feeling sad or feeling embarrassed. And also the good stuff like excited and happy, but they will come and go, but it's okay to feel their feeling. The behaviour, on the other hand, is a different thing. So not all behaviour is okay. So I would say something like, it's okay to be worried about something. It's not okay to stay at home in your bedroom for 3 weeks with a doona over your head because you're worried, because that behaviour that you're doing is not helpful. So we need to do something a bit different. It's okay to be angry. It's not okay to throw your drink bottle at somebody or, you know, hit your sister or something like that. It's okay to be embarrassed. It's not okay to be really rude or nasty to somebody because you're feeling embarrassed. So it's a challenging thought for lots of us, but good idea just over the next couple of weeks, the next week in particular, to think about this idea that the feelings are okay, and ways to give those messages to our children. So something along those lines. It's okay to be jealous because you didn't get to go to the party. It's not okay to, you know, throw your sister's lolly bag in the bin or, you know, something like that because you're jealous. So the feeling is all right to feel, but the behaviour is not always okay. And this can be a bit of a challenge for us because many of us as children didn't learn this. We learnt that it's not okay to feel stuff. So this can be a bit of a challenge. Part of why we're here for a couple of weeks. So what we want to do, I guess, in relation to this is think about ways that we can accept the emotion with our children and address the behaviour. So some of those examples I've just given, you know, let your child know that it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to yell or swear or kick or whatever it is they're doing. It's okay to be worried, but it's not okay for that to stop you from doing the things that you need to be doing. And so thinking a little bit about how you can get your child to accept the emotion but change the behaviour. This is particularly important with worry, and it goes back to what I just said a little bit before about controlling things. So all of the things we're teaching our children to do in these programs over the next couple of weeks are not about making worry go away, because you can't just over the next couple of weeks are not about making worry go away, because you can't just make worry disappear. You can't control it. Worrying's a normal part of human life. So if we're doing mindfulness or we're doing relaxation or we're doing something to make worry go away, we've got to be really careful that the message we're not giving our children is worry is bad and scary and terrible and you can't live with it, therefore we've got to make it go away. So it's really important to start thinking about saying things along the lines of, it's okay to be a bit worried about that, but then what's the behaviour, you know, but you still need to go to school. Some of those kind of things. I'm hoping that makes a little bit more sense. And when we start doing mindfulness and relaxation, some of those things, I'll remind you of that it's really important to set the tone when we're doing it and not make it a strategy for removing worry, because worry's bad and terrible and we shouldn't have it. And there's something wrong with us for worrying, because they're not. So I guess on top of that, thinking about feelings and behaviours and how we go about giving the message to our children about the emotion they're feeling and that's okay, and, you know, what are they going to do with their behaviour. The language and what we say really matters. So if we're giving the message to our child that it's scary or dangerous or terrible to be worried, by what we say or by what we do, you know, jumping in the car and getting straight down to the school and, you know, having an argument with someone because your child's worried about being there, or, you know, going up to your footy coach and trying to solve the problem for your child because they're worried. You just got to step back and be really careful that we're not giving them the message that worrying is wrong or bad. It's not pleasant, it's not fun, nobody likes to be worried or anxious about things, but it's a normal part of human nature to be worried about things, and that's really important for us to get that message across to our kids. So I guess what we want to do, they're all things that sound easy, but as I said before, it's quite difficult, particularly with worry and anxiety, because it is our reflex to want to jump in and fix it or remove it straight away. So we are going to spend the next couple of weeks talking about this more and giving you some practical ways to go about this. We'll give you some sentence starters and some scripts and some examples of the things to say to kids over the next couple of weeks. But before we do that, the most important thing to do this week is to really start to hone in and notice what is happening when you're worried or when your child's worried. So I really start observing over this week and seeing if you can tap into what they're feeling. So what emotion do you think might be going on? At what intensity is it? If you remember, I said, you know, a little bit worried about something or really distressed and anxious about something. what other feelings might be going on. Sometimes other emotions come into play, so they might be worried about doing something that's going to embarrass them, or worried about something that they're going to get into trouble, so fearful of somebody being angry. So have a bit of a look at those and see if you can understand the feelings a bit more. And also the physical sensation. So this is back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier on. It's really important to try and get a handle on what they're feeling. And lots of you, I noticed from the poll, have got quite young children, so, 8 and under. Sometimes they don't have great words or a great vocabulary around emotions when they're little like that. And so they'll talk about feeling sick or having butterflies in their tummy, or feeling like their heart's going a bit faster, or feeling like their hands are a bit sweaty. Or sometimes they talk about feeling a bit dizzy or a bit fuzzy in the head. Headaches, another thing that are common. So really helpful to talk a little bit about the physical sensations, and also the internal talk that might be going on for you as well as for them. But I'd particularly encourage you to think about this a little bit this week. When you're worried about something, what's going on inside your head? So are you saying things to yourself like, oh, what's the matter with me? I shouldn't be worried about this. It's going to be fine. I know it'll be all right. You're silly for worrying. That kind of internal talk. Or are you saying to yourself, gee, this is uncomfortable. I don't like being worried, but it's no wonder I'm worried about this because, it's a new situation or something's happening. Are you being judgy or are you being kind? So I think try and notice that in yourself a little bit this week. My experience is that we're much harder on ourselves than we are on our friends or on our kids. And so if you can try and understand a little bit of that internal talk in yourself first, then we can think a little bit about what might be going on inside our kids' heads, our children's heads, or the kids around us when this is going on, and what can we do about that. So this week's really a little bit, I guess, about exploring and understanding a little bit more, trying to pick things up at the lower end of the continuum that we talked about, and just having a better handle on it so that when we meet again next week, we're a bit clearer together about what things we need to address. The other thing I'm just asking you to do about this really, I guess, is be a little bit more accepting of worry yourself, I guess. So I'm kind of asking you to step in, I guess, as a way to think about it a little bit here, and kind of open up to thinking about what the feelings are and what the physical sensations are and what the internal talk is. That's a bit scary because, as I said before, what's your reflex? Your reflex is somebody's worried, let me make it go away. I get that. So we're kind of opening things up a little bit this week and just trying to be a little bit more aware and understand all of the elements of worry before we start giving a little bit more detail in how to manage the language and talk to your child about it and teach them some skills. So I'm hoping that's making a little bit of sense. I guess that's really what we wanted to cover for today, or this evening, I guess. This is about when we throw it open to questions.
That's correct. I might just bring us back on screen.
I'm just going to take a little drink because my voice is getting a bit croaky.
Yes.
I'll bring us on screen. They won't mind, I think, if I'm having a drink while I'm...
Poor Meredith has been sick. I hope she doesn't mind me letting everyone know we did have to postpone this session, as you're aware. So we're very grateful that even though she's still not 100%, she's been able to be here to talk to you this evening.
Thanks.
So should be able to see us on your screen again now if you were able to before. We've got some time for questions now, about 15 minutes of it. So do keep your questions coming in. I've taken a note of a few that have come up so far. But also think about some of those things that Meredith put to you, like, say, the difference between feelings and behaviour and how you might tackle them differently, maybe paying attention to your own attitudes towards feelings and anxiety in particular. And think about, is this something that you can apply? Because we're really suggesting that after listening to these webinars, you go home and try and do this in your day-to-day life so that it's actually helping you. And then next week you can come back and tell us how it went. So you can say, Meredith, that didn't work for me, or I need some more help with this or that. That's how we hopefully will get the most out of these sessions for you.
Great.
So yeah, keep your questions coming in as we're talking. But Meredith, one question that was quite popular, brought up by Josephine and a few other people, is the issue of tics and anxiety. Do you have
Yes.
anything to say about that? And in particular, how should you respond if your child shows some tics when they're feeling anxious?
Yeah, like I think tics, similar to other somatic conditions, is really common with anxiety. And I think, I guess what I would suggest is that I guess you follow through the steps that we're doing tonight. I found in clinical practice that lots of tics subside when children learn some ways to understand and manage their all their emotions, but particularly anxiety. So when they're feeling a bit more confident and feeling like they know what they can do, they subside. If they don't, then we'd need to think about getting a little bit more intense treatment. And sometimes what you learn in the webinar here is enough to get you started, but not quite enough to resolve everything. And so then we can suggest that you go along and get a little bit more assistance. But I guess my advice is to hang in there with us and to reassure you that it sounds like you're in the right place if that's what's happening, and just try the things we cover over the next couple of weeks and get back to us if that doesn't make a difference.
Great. Sorry, I think I said that was Josephine's question when hers was related, but it might be a similar answer, but I'll see what you say about this. What if your child has what we psychologists might traditionally call compulsions, like they have to do certain behaviours or routines, they have to walk a certain way, and you're thinking that might be related to anxiety?
Yeah, look, I guess that my answer would be similar. So I think a lot of those things are related to children trying to get some control over what's going on. So it's a little bit like I was saying before about how, somehow in their head they've got the message that worry is bad and terrible. And sometimes it's the physical discomfort is so horrible that they hate it. And they've found that if they do these things, it eases it a bit. But of course that causes problems in its own right. So what we want to do is try and give the message over the next little bit of time that that it's okay to be a bit worried and that you can survive and you can function normally and you can get on with the things you do while you're worried. You don't have to wait for the worry to disappear before you can move forward and do the things you want. And yes, it's uncomfortable, and yes, it's horrible, and I hate being worried, and Tony hates being worried, and I'm sure lots of you guys too hate that sick feeling and the feeling like you want to flee. But it's manageable, and the more you do it and the more you live through it and come out the other side, the easier it gets. So similar to the previous response, and to anybody else who's got, I've noticed there's people who've got kids with quite severe stomach pain and lots of headaches and some of those really severe symptoms, which are really distressing for the children and for you. Hang in there over the next couple of weeks. In week 4, we talk about what to do if this stuff hasn't resolved, the issues that you're having. We usually find that most people find it eases it, but that's not to say it might not totally fix it. So it'd be like you're on the right track, but you just need a little bit more help. So we'll help you when it gets to that point with what to do next. I also noticed somebody mentioned that that their daughter might have learnt a few of their anxious or anxiety because what they do is similar to what their dad does. Probably lots of you notice that, and that's really common, and that kids learn from what they see around us. And if we struggle a little bit with how we manage anxiety, then our kids are going to learn that too. So think back to what I mentioned at the start, which is about, think about how you do it and what you do, and whether you're showing them that anxiety is a terrible thing and it paralyses you, or whether you're showing them that you never get anxious, you never worry about anything, and which, neither of which is all that helpful. And then spend some time with us over the next little bit of time to think about how you can find that balance between letting them know that it's normal to be worried and it shouldn't paralyse them, but still helping them to move forward.
Great. Okay. Just to interrupt for a second, if you do have to leave early, we have a feedback survey which we'd love to get your input on. Kim, who's here with us in Melbourne, has just shared a link to that a moment ago in the chat. So we'd appreciate your feedback. We understand that you're busy if you have to head off. Just follow that link, but if you can stick around, that would be great. We'll be talking for another maybe 10 minutes to answer a few more of these questions. There are a couple of questions on a theme here, Meredith, that I'll put one to you and then the other. They're both about sort of talking to children when they're feeling anxious. What about if kids kind of deny that they're anxious? You can tell that they're really anxious, but they say, no, they deny.
I'm not, Okay, that is so common, actually common with all kinds of emotions. A number of prep and grade 1 boys who've told me that they never get angry. And you may know some children in your lives who've told you they're not tired, even though it's 11:30 at night and really they should have been in bed quite a long time ago. So my advice is 2 things, I guess. Don't be put off by that. If you feel like they're anxious or they're worried about something and you're pretty confident that that's what's going on, I would just leave it. You know that they're not right, but I wouldn't get into an argument about it at this point. Next week we'll cover I would do some more observing, as I've mentioned this week, so see if you can get a better understanding of what physical symptoms there might be, what might be going on inside their head, what they might be feeling. So, you could ask them maybe, I wonder if you're feeling, a little bit angry or a little bit embarrassed. Throw some other emotions in, see what comes back, but just use it as a bit of an explore, not as an educational point now. So once you've got a better handle on all of that, next week we'll talk to you about some ways to go about addressing it with children. What we will be doing is labelling it for them and letting them know what it is without getting into a bit of an argument. But I would avoid an argument about it at this point, because then you're going to end up angry and frustrated, and they're also going to be angry and frustrated as well as worried, and it's just going to go from this to it might get bigger and bigger. But it's really common. Think about that tired one. That sometimes helps, I'm not tired.
That's an apt analogy, I'd say. Yes.
Yeah.
Many of us can relate to that.
Yeah.
And related to that question, what if you're something's coming up and you think it's going to make your child anxious? So, some particular event that they struggle with, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there were two questions about that. Like, how should you prepare them? What sort of things might you say to them ahead of it, or should you even say anything, or is it better to just kind of not build it up?
Yeah. Look, all kids are different. So it's a little bit of a challenging question, but the general rule, knowing that there's sometimes exceptions, the general rule would be to let them know if there's something coming up that you think is going to worry them, but be careful how you word it. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more next week. But if this week you've got something that you need to say, it's along the lines of saying things like, it's okay to be worried about this, or it's okay to be a bit worried, and then go on to say the reasons why it will be okay. So just preempting what we're going to cover next week, it's a little bit along the lines of saying something like, you have to go into hospital to have an operation, but it'll be fine because I'll be with you and the doctors know what they're doing. So that is not as effective of saying you're going to need to go into hospital to have an operation. That's something that people get worried about. So I can understand if you might be worried about that, but I'll be with you and the doctors are really effective. And so what you're doing is kind of inserting a kind of an understanding of the emotion, or an acceptance or a normalising of the fact that a child's going to be worried about it, before you give it all the reasons why it's going to be okay. And what we know, if we do that, is that the message your kids are getting is that, firstly, that my parent or my teacher or whoever it is understands how I feel, and they can cope with it or they can manage it. So it's going to be okay because they get it, and then they'll be more able to take in the other information that you've got about why it'll probably be okay, rather than the first example, which is jumping straight into why it's okay. The message, if you do that, you're going into hospital, but don't worry because it'll be fine, is you shouldn't be worried. There's nothing to worry about. Worrying's bad, and in fact, if you're worried, there's something wrong with you because I've just told you shouldn't be worried, and that's not a message that we want to give. But that's a lot of information in a couple of short. So we will spend a lot of time, actually most of next week is about like how you decide what to say, what you say, how you deliver it, what can go wrong. All of that next week.
Great, I'm looking forward to that. We'll have maybe a couple more questions. I'm sorry if we don't get to all of them, folks, but the good news is we will save these up for future sessions. So often we find in these webinars people vary in terms of how many questions they have, so there may be a lot more time to address questions next week. But we'll just do a couple more tonight, I think. One question that I wanted to address was, no, I can't remember what I was going to say. Let me just find the question I was going to ask. Oh, yes. So just some other symptoms that might go along with anxiety, like behavioural issues.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Caroline was saying things like back chat and tantrums.
Yep.
And I think, judging from her question, perhaps that could be a bit frustrating. She was saying it comes across as manipulative.
Yeah, it's certainly very frustrating, isn't it, with back chat? So what often helps, I find, with this, and certainly helped me with my kids, was kind of trying to stand in your child's shoes a little bit. So I would think about what are some of the things that I do when I'm worried. Not only some of the effective things, but some of the not so effective things as well. And I know when I'm worried, I'm a bit snappy. If I'm really worried about something, I'm not as attuned to what's going on, to the people around me. I'm less likely to pick up on somebody else's body language. I don't know about you, Tony, but I'm likely to be, particularly around the people who I know love me, and you know, I can sort of suck it up for work a bit, but at home I'll tend to be a bit more grumpy and a bit more difficult to get on with. Same thing for our children. That's really likely to happen as well. So I would say absolutely, tantrums and being snappy are really common symptoms. In fact, something I'm probably likely to do if I'm not managing my worry really well is get a bit over everything. But there's lots of causes for tantrums and being difficult to get on with and being... So we're not saying that it's necessarily worried, but it's likely to be. And we will address that. So remember what I said earlier about the feeling's okay, but the behaviour might not be. So it's okay to be worried. It's not okay to be rude. It's not okay to throw tantrums. It's not okay to be snappy or difficult with people around you. So this is what we wouldn't want to teach your son or your daughter in that situation is the worry's okay, but these are the things you can do when you're worried, and these are the things you shouldn't do.
Interestingly, we do run webinars on dealing with tantrums, and it's exactly the same messaging there, that you target the behaviour, but accept the emotion underlying it. That they can have a valid reason for behaving that way, but we don't have to accept the behaviour. But
it's exceptionally frustrating. I'm hearing that.
One more thing I'd like to address. I'm not sure if we can really say too much about it. There were a couple of questions about selective mutism and managing it in a professional setting. I do wonder if that's one of those things kind of beyond the scope that we can kind of help you with in this sort of general information.
Yeah, it probably is really. So selective mutism is a challenge, and there's lots of causes for it. Anxiety is one, but it's not the only one. So it's one of those symptoms, I guess, that can have lots of causes. And I wouldn't be jumping to the conclusion that the child is anxious and that's what's causing mutism, selective mutism. If your child has been diagnosed with selective mutism or have someone in your class who's got selective mutism, I'd be encouraging to get some support for how to manage that. However, the things you're learning here they're not going to make it worse, but whether or not they'll resolve selective mutism is unclear, but they won't hurt, that's for sure.
Okay. So that's all we're going to have time for tonight, folks. I can see that Kim has clarified in the chat for people that you have signed up for all 4 sessions just by registering. And so if you're here tonight, if you got the email for tonight, you should get the one for next week. But on that note, be aware that it will be a different link next week. So don't click the same link from this week's email. Just watch your email box, and next week you'll get a new link sent to you. If you're interested in the recording and handouts, those will also be sent to you via email. So it's all done via email. So thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you, Meredith, for your time this evening, for talking to everyone. We've kept track of any leftover questions, which hopefully we'll get to next time. And otherwise, have a lovely evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next time.
See you next week. Thank you.